Hello Dragonfly Swarm. I suppose I should preface everything by saying Shinobu just came out as of me making this video, and she's actually kind of the reason I started thinking about making this video. Electro is one of the most controversial elements in Genshin Impact. Some people think it's perfectly fine as an element, some people think it could use some tweaks here or there, and some people think it's awful, like trash, which objectively speaking isn't really the case. Electro is an element that even to this day I only see getting consistent positive recognition from the top Genshin mathematicians and theory crafters in the community. And no, neither they nor I are claiming it's a super powerful element like Hydro, for example, but it is by far the most underestimated element in the game. In fact, I quite often see people on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram comments talking about how sad they are that their favorite characters are Electro, or that they wish Electro would be heavily directly buffed. And while I'm by no means saying some of Electro's interactions couldn't use a slight little bump, I am saying that a large portion of the community doesn't seem to understand just how powerful Electro really can be, and I think that's for a few reasons, to be fair. So today, I'm gonna go over the biggest misconceptions and underestimations about Electro, discuss why and how Electro is as powerful as it is, and look at the Electro character roster and how this all affects those established young women in Wolf. To start with the forefront of Electro's gameplay, the elemental reactions that Electro provides to the game have been some of the weirdest and most confusing reactions even to this day. And it led many players in early Genshin days to believe that Electro was not just a dull element, but a disruptive one. Most specifically with Overloaded, a reaction between Electro and Pyro that causes an AoE explosion of damage that knocks enemies backwards. Not only is this reaction naturally disruptive just by its mechanics, but it's also one of the main reasons people hated off-field Electro units, because in a time where Pyro characters dominated the meta with Vaporize reactions, Overloaded was just a horribly disruptive byproduct of Electro accidentally eating the Pyro off an enemy before it can vape. And even beyond that, the damage that Overloaded deals is somewhat confusing as well, because while not explicitly stated in-game, Overloaded damage can only scale off of your character's level and elemental mastery, and the damage itself cannot crit. With that said though, Overloaded itself isn't that bad of a reaction. I'd assume it's just that back in the day, the game's Pyro DPS units consisted of Klee, Diluc, and Hu Tao, none of which characters could comfortably close the gaps that this reaction created between themselves and the enemies when it launched them. Nowadays though, we have both Yoimiya and Yanfei who are much better at capitalizing off of the reaction because of their long range, and while even then Overloaded definitely isn't a popular or crazy powerful reaction to base your teams around, it's certainly gotten a few more applicable strategies over the last year of Genshin's lifespan, not only with Yoimiya and Yanfei, but also with Soup and Sunfire Overvape teams. Still though, I'd say it's fair to say Overloaded is Electro's weakest reaction overall by quite a bit. This is pretty clear because of Razor and more dramatically Eula, both of whom somewhat popularized Superconduct. Superconduct is the reaction between Cryo and Electro in which they cause an explosion that does laughable damage, but enemies hit by the explosion have 40% of their physical resistance shredded for 12 seconds. So already, unlike Overloaded, this reaction actually provides very strong utility to physical damage carries and makes it pretty much a required reaction for those carries. The only problem with Superconduct is that there are, as I said, only 2 characters in the game currently that were actually designed to deal massive amounts of physical damage. So while Superconduct is definitely a huge step up from Overloaded, it still isn't the most popular reaction, mostly just because there aren't many accessible characters that can utilize it to a viable extent yet. However, Electro's third unique reaction is one that pretty much everyone knows about, and it's Electro-Charged. And this reaction has a very weird history. Electro-Charged is extremely deceptive in its functions, which led many older players and still leads many newer players to believe that it's an underwhelming damage reaction because up front and when played incorrectly, it does kind of look like that. But that couldn't actually be further from the truth. Electro-Charged has an absolutely absurd amount of hidden mechanics, what with Hydro and Electro's unique elemental gauge interaction and all the other interactions this unique combination creates, which has thrown some of the most talented theory crafters and guide makers through a loop for a long time and still continues to do so because to this day there are still many things that we don't fully understand about this reaction. The most interesting use of this reaction, however, is actually one of the main reasons why many Electro characters are as strong as they are. In Taser teams where Electro and Hydro characters are constantly triggering Electro-Charged to chain onto enemies and rack up damage, Animo characters can actually double swirl because of the persisting Hydro and Electro aura on enemies, allowing for essentially double swirl damage and a very high overall team damage output. This makes off-field Animo characters such as Kazuha especially valuable because it allows him to grant not just the Electro character an elemental damage bonus, but also the Hydro characters, because his passive will trigger for both elements, further increasing the strength of Taser teams. This same logic can be applied especially dramatically to Sucrose, a 4-star that I'm sure the vast majority of players have because of her amazing potential as a driver for Electro-Charged teams. Her innate Animo infusion will allow her to constantly double swirl Taser teams whilst also triggering important synergies such as Xingqiu or Yelan's burst attacks, Beidou, Fischl, or Raiden's Raiden's abilities, etc., also that Sucrose is fully capitalizing on Taser's potential. It's true too that Electro-Charged definitely wasn't always as strong as it is nowadays, but it was never weak per se, just very misleading. And anyways, there are so many characters nowadays that make powerful additions to Taser teams that Electro-Charged has arguably become one of the most popular reactions in the game. But it would be quite unfair to say that it's just the reactions that make Electro good, because it's also just as true that the gameplay design of most Electro characters also plays a big role in its overall strength. Every element has somewhat of a niche playstyle that the majority of its roster conforms to, Pyros generally being high upfront damage dealers, Hydros generally being utility and support characters, Animos generally being crowd controllers, and Electros generally being off-field damage dealers, and by extension, great team batteries and amazing Electro applicators. The majority of typical Electro characters are kinda just naturally good at causing reactions, which ironically was what made them undesirable in early Genshin days. But they're all similar in that they have some sort of high uptime off-field presence with their Electro abilities, whether those abilities deal damage, buff allies, or even heal allies now that Shinobu is in the game. But before Inazuma came out, and for a long time actually, the only two notable typical Electro characters were Fischl and Beidou, both of which characters having very complex hidden mechanics that players didn't yet know about, even further straining the community's relationship with Electro characters. It took quite a while for us to realize the immense strengths that both of these characters had, but when we did realize it, suddenly Fischl began seeing lots of play in the Spiral Abyss for her insane battery potential and high off-field damage, and Beidou, while slower to be popularized, began to see play for her absurdly high damage output. Even then though, every time a new Electro character was released, they received similar treatment, spending a few weeks or months stirring up the community with some people arguing that the character is underwhelming and some saying that they're broken. As a great example, when Raiden came out, many players originally figured she was a very underwhelming Archon character who had little potential, but as the weeks went by and players tested her in Electro-centered teams as well as the national team, the community kinda collectively realized that she is without a doubt one of the strongest characters in the game for many different reasons. Basically, the complexity of her kit was staggering, and it didn't help that she's an Electro character released at a time where Electro teams were still only just beginning to be understood. And then Yae Miko was released, and players once again called her a very underwhelming character, which in all fairness, she actually is underwhelming in her own way. But it has little to do with her element, and much more to do with her very weird kit design. And finally, the most recent typical Electro character, no I didn't forget Sarah, she's just not like other Electro characters, is Kuki Shinobu, who has really underwhelmed the community, I'm not gonna lie. She's definitely not a standout character, and she's not particularly strong, but as an Electro character with high off-field presence, she fits pretty well into a lot of Electro's strongest teams. Taser comps, soup teams, superconduct teams for physical carries, so on and so forth. And even then, I'm willing to bet a lot of her strength has yet to be learned and or we haven't been given access to it yet. Because Shinobu, just like Raiden, just like Fischl, just like Beidou, and kinda sorta like Yae, has complex interactions with the game because of not only her kit, but her element, and players need time to figure these things out. In modern day Genshin, even though some Electro characters are widely used for their battery potential and Taser comps have seen much more play with the release of Kokomi, Raiden, Kazuha, Ayato, Yelan, etc., I still feel like there's a lot of people that don't fully understand how good Electro actually is. Like I said, I see people on social media all the time talking about Electro being weak or like rating it the lowest on an elemental tier list, which mind you is absolutely Geo. I love Geo, but Hoyoverse does not. And every good Electro character has gone through at least a few weeks, if not months, of scrutiny because of a general lack of understanding about their kits. But like all things, time will tell if Kuki and Yae are actually bad, or if they're just incomplete, because the fact that both of them have elemental mastery scaling, that's weird. Especially because Subaru is around the corner, which means new characters and likely new mechanics. I don't know. I'm gonna shut up and end the video because speculating is pointless. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want, you should totally join my Discord server because I'd love to see you around in my community and say hello. Alright, I'm off to potentially grind out a Shinobu guide, but everyone's already kind of done that because of the early access server, so we'll see. Goodbye!